Stephen Gethins.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. In terms of powers for the Scottish Parliament, we were promised, the people of Scotland were promised, Mr Speaker, a week before the vote that Scotland would decide its own immigration policy in the event of Brexit. Now, next week we have a crucial vote on EU nationals. We have another opportunity. If this government will not use its powers to give EU nationals the certainty they require, will they give those powers to the Scottish Parliament?
Well, again, we are at aims and ends and means. The simple truth is that the Scottish Government has raised a very important issue on the Joint Ministerial Committee about the question of the immigration needs of Scotland. And I have reflected those questions to the Home Secretary, and I would expect when we come to a UK immigration policy, will reflect the needs of every part of the United Kingdom.
Stephen Gethins.
Well, I look forward to having the Secretary of State's support for his Leave campaign's promises on immigration power being given to Scotland. As part of that and as part of EU nationals, will he consider the European Court of Justice from 2012 that Zambrano versus Office National de l'Emploi, that gave EU nationals with primary caring responsibilities the right to reside in the member state of which their dependent child or adult is a national? Will they give consider that as well?
I'll say this to the honourable gentleman. I'm not familiar with the individual case, and I will look at it and come back to him on that, as is my normal approach. But I'll say this to him. The European Court of Justice will not rule over the United Kingdom after the date of Brexit. That does not mean we will not have a very humane and sensible and straightforward policy with respect to things like family relationships that he talks about. But I will look at the case in detail and come back.
Speaker, last Thursday, the leader of his party in Scotland described the transfer of control over farm subsidies as a power grab, and I don't think she meant that in a good way. Could I now ask the Secretary of State, will he put her mind at rest and simply confirm that Scottish fishing and Scottish agriculture will be governed in Scotland after Brexit?
I will repeat to the honourable gentleman what I said earlier. No powers exercised by the Scottish Parliament or the Scottish Government will be taken away. We will debate. We will debate with all the devolved administrations, not simply Scotland, what is the appropriate level of exercise of these powers after exit.
To Pete Wishart.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can I thank you for the birthday wishes? And I'll always be a year older than you, sir, so there we go. And as well as being my birthday, it's also Budget Boxing Day. And if anything, Budget Boxing Day is actually more interesting and more revealing than Budget Day itself, because Budget Boxing Day is where we get all these useful clarifications, the start of all the climb downs and the justification for all those broken manifesto promises. It usually involves the Chancellor of the Exchequer scurrying around all the broadcasters trying to do all these things at once. So can I suggest a way how we could maybe resolve this? How about having a statement on Budget Boxing Day where the Chancellor of the Exchequer could come here, give all these useful clarifications, start all the climb downs and justify all these broken manifesto promises? In Scotland, we're grateful for that £350 million that we're going to secure in ballot consequentials as a result of this budget. But we do note that this is exactly the same amount of money. This £350 million is the same money that Scotland will get in a year that the NHS is supposed to get in 1 week after we leave Brexit. And it's hardly going to offset the £3 billion worth of cuts that we'll face in the next 10 years. Mr Speaker, I note in the business paper there's 3 days set aside for consideration of Lord's amendments if necessary, as this government attempts to ping that Pong that's coming from those heroes in Ermine who are continuing to stand up to the government. But I note that this only goes on till Wednesday. So what happens if we've still got these paddles out and we're still at the table? Is the government going to enforce the Parliament Act? How does this impact on this Article 50 process? And will he clarify today what is going to go on? But can we encourage the people's aristocrats to continue to back for that Remain cause? And lastly, Mr Speaker, has the Leader of the House got any explanation for the behaviour of the Prime Minister yesterday when it looked like she was swallowing a fish when she was sitting there at that front bench? It was almost like Mike Yarwood doing an impersonation of Ted Heath. Can you go back to number 10 and tell her there's no place for behaviour like that?
Mr Speaker, can I first of all wholeheartedly wish the honourable gentleman many happy returns of the day, and it was obvious seeing him sitting there that the first thing he did this morning was to unwrap his birthday socks and tie. And I am sure that they were just what he has always wanted. He asked me about the Article 50 bill, and it's perfectly routine for the government to announce provisional business in case there is a need to debate Lords' amendments. The House of Lords has a perfectly proper role as a revising chamber, but it also knows that it is an unelected House, and I hope that the House of Lords will want to give very careful consideration to whatever views this House takes on its amendments next week, and to accept that ultimately the view not just of the elected House but the view of the British people expressed in a referendum should prevail.
Alex Salmond.
Thinking about Monday's business, 2 weeks ago, Business Questions, the Leader of the House broke with his established procedure of a lifetime in politics by giving me what he described as a straight answer when I asked if it was possible, roughly speaking, to say what the process of negotiation with Europe would yield. Amazingly enough, and by an extraordinary coincidence, it turns out I was actually quoting the leader of the Leave campaign, Dominic Cummings, when he said last year, "No one in their right mind would begin a legally defined 2-year maximum period to conduct negotiations before they actually knew, roughly speaking, what the process was going to yield." Is the Prime Minister of sound mind?
As my honourable friend said from a secondary position, I don't recall the Prime Minister leading the Leave campaign or being responsible for their statements. The Prime Minister's view and the government's view was spelled out in detail in the recent White Paper, where we described our negotiating objectives to secure the best possible access to and freedom to operate within the single market for British business, a fair deal for our citizens in Europe and European citizens here, and so on. But this is a negotiation that will involve 27 other countries as well, and they are clear that it is only when Article 50 is triggered that that process of negotiation can start.
Brown.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. In yesterday's budget, the Chancellor made a welcome move to clear up a VAT anomaly when pledging to collect VAT and telecoms abroad. Given that's going to bring extra money into the Exchequer, is it now time to clear up another VAT anomaly in terms of VAT being applied to Police Scotland, Fire and Rescue Scotland? So will the Leader of the House make a statement confirming he agrees that this should be the case and commit the Government to agreeing to amendments to the Finance Bill?
I can't make the commitment the honourable gentleman wants me to do, but I'll make sure that the Chancellor is aware of the point he's just made.
Grant.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Earlier this week, the Brexit Select Committee unanimously recommended that there should be an end to the practice whereby the Home Office sometimes writes to EU nationals who have established a legal right of permanent residence in the United Kingdom. The Home Office write to these people telling them to prepare to leave and threatening to deport them if they don't leave voluntarily. Can we have an urgent statement from the Home Secretary confirming that she will act immediately to end this odious treatment of our residents?
The law is quite clear on this matter. We are still a full member of the European Union, and that means that all rights deriving from the Free Movement Directive still apply in this country and will do so up until the date of exit. It is also the Government's oft-repeated objective to ensure that at the earliest possible stage of negotiations we have a reciprocal agreement that guarantees the rights of EU citizens in this country and of British citizens in the other 27 member states.